I have a riddle for you. What missionary has no eyes, no ears, no arms or legs, and no mouth, but is able to go into more places than humans can? This missionary can be carried around by other humans and speak many different languages without going to school. The answer? This missionary is a tool that seed sowers use, most commonly referred to as a track. And this is what I want to talk to you guys mostly about today. All right, my name is David Gordon, and I have been passing out tracts, Christian tracts, for about 8 years now, every week. And it has been so amazing. And a lot of people, they have questions on it, like why tracts, why do they use them, and are they successful? And from my own personal testimony, I can tell you that yes. Okay, now look at a tract. It is the size of a seed. Okay, it's not the Bible. Okay, we're not here to replace a Bible. It's just a tool. Okay, this is what I want to really hone in on here. Okay, and this tract is something that gets the message across really quickly that we cannot always, talk to, when it comes to, talking to people and anything like that. So let me tell you a testimony. So when I grew up with a mom and dad that weren't really relational with me. Okay, they were very kept at one arm's distance. But one day, my mom said, "I'm going to put a box for you together," and so she did. And she said, "You need to go check in that box." And I said, "Okay, no problem." Anyway, I went to go in that box, and I'm looking through it, and I had my baby shoes and some baby clothes and everything. And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cute. It's kind of boring." Now, mind you, I'm 16 years old. Okay, and all of a sudden, I keep digging through it, and I find this little pamphlet. I was like, "What is called This Was Your Life" by Jack Cherry. And I started reading it. From the moment I opened the first page, I was hooked. The gospel and to what happens if you didn't do it. And I was so taken back by this. Like, I'm looking around like, is someone preaching to me? Because no one's here. Anyway, so I hold it and I'm like, okay, no problem. And I kind of forget about it for a little bit. But I'll tell you what, fast forward 16 and a half years, I got saved. And I'll tell you what happened every year during that 16 years. That track kept coming back to my mind all the time. Oh my gosh, I need Jesus. But I would fight it. But I remember that track. It was yesterday. And so I was like, man, and it's something now mind you, my mom was religious, but she could never portray the gospel message to me, ever. But I knew she was trying to get through to me, and that was it right there. And that's why I want to talk about the tracts and how it does. And another reason for tracts, and we have to really go back into it. I can't even believe how many wonderful preachers that we know from the past have used that. Okay, let me talk to you from just a few. Okay, you might, and a lot of us know these guys. Okay, we got John Wesley, the famous, infamous Methodist preacher who started the Methodist movement. In its roots, it was beginning, just to let that out there now. I don't know how it is, but I'm just letting you know. This is for what he said. God does nothing but in answer to prayer, and even they who have been converted to God without hearing of a Bible were converted by the instrumentality of a track. Wow. Jonathan Edwards, the great preacher through England. Preaching is the appointed means of salvation, but other means must be used as well. He believed that tracts could provide a written record of the gospel message that people could revisit and reflect on in their own time. You see that? This goes back to what we were talking about from the paper missionary. It goes places we can't. And, and let's face it, a lot of people, they don't want to, so a lot of people don't want to interact. A lot of people, and we live in a society where we're go, 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 go. Energy, energy, energy. We got to go here, we got to go there, we got to go this. And we're all looking for a quick, 5-second presentation. A lot of us don't have 5 seconds. We want to sit down and talk to people. But that's where tracts go, okay? And we got George Mueller, the infamous guy who got converted and people said he was too old to do anything as far as a missionary. So he started orphanages, and probably the most orphanages in England at the time. And he got quoted as saying, "I am convinced that thousands upon thousands of tracts have been blessed to the conversion of sinners and to the edification and comfort of saints." Mueller also believed that tracts could be used to address specific issues or concerns that people might have. And he often distributed tracts on topics such as prayer, the importance of Bible reading, and of course the dangers of alcohol and tobacco and other issues that sometimes me and you can't express the way we want to. And Charles, especially George Mueller, understood that we all have that mentality, like all of a sudden, hey, we talk to a person that we really want to emphasize to get to Christ, right? And then we go back and we say, well, I should have said this and I should have said that. But when you have a tract, you give them the message that says exactly what you want to, and guess what? I remember even in my mom's, like this, I was kind of arguing with the tract a little bit, but I'm like, who am I arguing with? I'm not arguing with, how am I, anyway, but the point of what I'm trying to say, you can't argue with it. Who are you going to argue with? You got to argue, you got to talk to God. It's between you and God. It's not between you and the person who gave you the tract, or you and the person of this. You have to make your own decision, And let me give you another one. Charles Spurgeon, everybody calls the Prince of Preachers, and we all quote him. I haven't seen one non-denominational church that really hasn't quoted Charles Spurgeon. And he said, tracts are more useful than sermons. You were talking about the guy who can preach, who can just come up to the pulpit and preach off a whim. No notes, no nothing. And just belt out a sermon, a 3-hour sermon. Now this guy right here, tracts are more useful than a sermon, because most people will read a tract when they would go to hear a sermon. Also, if you cannot preach a sermon, you can at least distribute a tract. This is in an age of cheap and plentiful literature. Let us use the press for spreading the gospel, and let us do it with all of our might. And tracts are one of the most useful forms of literature, and we ought to use them continually. They scatter the good seed far and wide. They bring truth home to men's businesses and bosoms, and thus they work wonders. Okay, and Billy Graham. Now we're going through preachers from the past all the way to the present. Now we got Billy Graham most recently. He says, nothing surpasses a tract for sowing the seed of the gospel news. A Christian book relates the true story of a diver who saw a piece of paper clothed in the shell of an oyster. The man grabbed it, found that it was a gospel tract, and said, I can't hold out any longer. His mercy is so great, as he has caused his word to follow me even to the bottom of the ocean. God used a tract to save that man in the ocean. A diver. What? The testimonies go on, but the last one I want to talk about is Ray Comfort. Okay? Ray Comfort is still alive. He is the only one alive out of all these preachers I just talked to you about. And he goes, in writing to the Corinthian believers, Paul explains the length to which he would go to share the gospel. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. 1 Corinthians 9:22. If Paul meant by all means, he no doubt would have used gospel tracts as a means to reach the lost. Never underestimate the power of a good gospel tract. After George Whitefield read one called The Life of God in the Soul of Man, he said, "God showed me I must be born again or be damned." He went on to pray, "Lord, if I am not a Christian or if I am not a real one for Jesus Christ's sake, show me what Christianity is, that I may not be damned at last." Then his journal tells us, "From that moment did I know that I must become a new creature, from not only from hearing the sermon, but from the track who went with him." Now, there's some questions about tracks that we need to go over. And these are from people that I've heard from all the time. I even heard from very well-meaning Christians, and I get their questions. But in a world, and I want to sidetrack just for a second. In a world of time, I have no time. Okay, and so a track gets the message across because I don't have time to have one-on-one conversations all the time. So that's the main point I want to get across. However, don't just take my word for it. Here are some questions that people get about tracks, okay? I've been told that tracks are a waste of time. Of course, the best thing to do is to sit down and discuss Jesus. We got no issues with that. Okay, tracks aren't the end all, right? The goal is to want to sit down with someone, lead them to Jesus. We get that. We want to do that, okay? Okay? There is just one problem with this, though. We don't know who they are. And in order to find them, we've got to advertise, right? And again, many testimonies who said, when I've talked to people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you gave me that tract and I went to church and I got saved. You gave me the tract, I read it over and over and over, and I started talking to more people about Jesus, and I just read the tract and I started talking about Jesus and I got saved." You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? It's just a tool, conversation starter. Okay? If anything, when you start passing out tracts, it's a conversation starter. I have so many people, man. I really don't know how to approach anybody. At least I didn't know how back then, And so I was so scared to evangelize. I would go, I would hand someone the tract, say, and they're like, they would take it, and I would say Jesus, and I would run away. Because I was like, I can't do this, but tracks can, right? And like I said, we're not idolizing tracks here. We're not saying, oh, this method and that method, but what we're trying to do is really get you to be confident in using this piece of literature that can get the point across when you can. That can be in a home when you can, when no one wants to invite you to a home, but they say, okay, I'll take that tract, And so the second question we have, or even a comment, was tougher problem with witnessing. Years ago, Jack Chick, as I was talking about, that was my first tract that I read that really got me thinking about Jesus, and I ended up. Years ago, Jack Chick, and you can actually insert your name, was a new Christian who faced a problem. Whenever he would try to witness to someone to obey the Lord's command, something would interrupt him. Imagine that. If he were in an office, the phone would ring. If he were in a home, the dog would bark. The kids would cry. It was always something. And there had to be a way to reach people. Tracks, right? And I love this one, is even shy people can witness too. And that's what I was telling you about when I first started using and witnessing. If you find it difficult to witness because you are shy, you don't feel like you're the only one, millions of Christians struggle with the same thing. And here's how one Christian expressed it so well. I've been in the tract ministry, and it's not me, okay? I've been in the tract ministry for years, and sure love to pass out your tracts. They are grabbing stories which which people cannot help but read. I put them everywhere because I'm too shy to talk to people. I am not particularly good with my words, but I love everyone, and I don't want anyone to go to hell for eternity. And I could not wish hell on my own worst enemy. So like I said, this is a tool. In this part, I want to talk about testimonies, personal testimonies. Now, there's a Bible verse that says, to whom much sows, much, you harvest a lot too. So weekly sowing of a gospel tract. Now, this isn't me preaching 3-hour sermons every week or, doing any sort of personal one-on-one testimonies a lot, because like I said, I'm in a situation where I have no time, but I do have time when I'm going to the grocery store, right? And, I leave tracts in people's windows. I leave tracts in the beer. I love to do that, tracks in diapers, so if, but a lot of people, they're like, well, that's not a way, some parts, a way to witness, and stuff like that. And I even heard one person say, that's a coward's way to witness. Okay, now let me tell you some testimonies. And as I was going in there and I, leaving tracks in the beer, like whatever, somebody's like, you're the one doing it. So, and he's like, it really convicted me. And he's, started going to church again. I had another situation where, I go on the streets and tell people about Jesus too. And I had someone come up to me and he says, you remember when you were at the bank with me? And I said, oh yeah, I remember, you were my teller. And she goes, you gave me a tract. Now I'm at church and a ladies' Bible study, and I'm full speed into the word, man. I appreciate you. Another one, where I was, I always have this saying, people get saved in bathrooms too, okay? You don't have to be in the church. You don't have to be, like I said, I was convicted in an attic at 10, I'll tell it later, but in South Carolina, okay? In an attic. And it doesn't matter where you are because God's everywhere, right? As the Bible verse says, if I go to the highest heaven, you're there. Even if I make my bed in Sheol, you're there. So the Lord is everywhere, okay? And it doesn't matter where you get saved. You can get saved in the beer aisle. You get saved on 4th Street in Reno, where a lot of homeless and stuff that happens and stuff. But what I'm trying to get at is that when you're passing out these tracts and these people and you lead someone to Jesus, it is so special. And the most testimony I have is, I gotta really express this, is when I hand these tracts out, I say, have you gotten one? Okay, as simple as have you gotten one? And all of a sudden we're having a conversation that starts about Jesus now, and it is so amazing, the multiple amount. And I have people come by and they're like, hey, and they hold out the track and they have really expressed, I know you couldn't do this, man, but this did it, and like I said, there is so many times where you're gonna get, tongue tied, and even wherever you have, maybe you're a new Christian and stuff like that, and you just really want to tell people about Jesus, and you can do like me, just hand them a track and run, run the other way, but you really love them, you really want to tell them about Jesus. Nothing is better, okay? I want to express it again. Nothing is better, obviously, than the Bible, okay? But like I said, the tracts are in forms of seeds. You're passing out a seed that's getting the gospel message, and it's just a seed for someone else to maybe water, someone to plant, someone to water. Of course, we know what did Jesus say, right? This is Paul speaking through the Holy Spirit. What did he say? He said, Apollos planted, I watered, and Jesus brought the harvest. Okay. Now, have I led people to Christ with the tract? Of course, but it doesn't happen all the time. But like I said, testimony after testimony. And I want to finish with this one testimony. This guy's a pastor now. This little old lady, she was on a bus, and she knew that this guy was down, was going through something, who knows? But she decided, you know what? By the power of the Holy Spirit, by having a leap of faith, by having, you know what? I can't talk to this man. I'm older, right? She goes up to him and says, "Hey, I got something for you." He says, and the guy says, I usually don't take anything, but she was a little cute old lady, so I decided to say, "Hey, I'm gonna take this, and stuff." And so she did, or he did. Sorry, forgive me. And so he did. But then as soon as he got on the bus, he threw it down. Threw it down. And so, anyway, he goes and and he starts walking away, right? Well, he goes to his house, and lo and behold, he's forget about the little old lady, forget about anything. Anyway, he starts taking off his shoe, and he noticed something on the bottom of his shoes. What's this? It's a track. He gets the track, reads the track, convicts him, he gets saved right then and there. And it is it's amazing, obviously, but the question is also too is we gotta understand. But wait a minute, there might be some spiritual warfare. This isn't really going to bring, because what I want to try to express about when you witness for Jesus, you are going to experience spiritual warfare. Okay, it's just the way it is. Okay, and the closing testimony I want to portray in this battle that we're in is: do demons hate tracks? Right? It's not the Bible, right? Yes, they do, with passion. So I was in Target. Okay, this is exactly when they started allowing men and women to go in the same bathroom. And of course, we decided we're going to all take a stand. We're going to boycott Target. Yeah, that's good, right? You've got convictions. I got convictions. But we decided to say, you know what? No, I don't want to. I see. Said, why are we convicting a place? Basically, you're kicking all the Christians out. And you're allowing the enemy to come in, right? You're allowing the enemy to just envelop and take over this one place. When, yeah, it's cool to take a stand. Yes, you should. But why not walk in there? Why not leave tracks? Right? Yeah, you can't go in there and to middle of Target and says, "Hey, everybody listen up. You're going to be escorted out by the cops," right? So anyway, I go into the bathroom and I start putting tracks. I always put tracks in the bathroom and everything like that. It's totally legal, by the way. And just on the toilet paper stall, right? Anyway, so I get out of there and I wash my hands. I'm washing my hands, but okay, now mind you, the mirror looks back into the stall. And anyway, I'm washing my hands, and I'm not even looking at the mirror, and I'm just washing, and then I look up, and I've seen a dark figure behind me, grabs the track, crushes it, throws it down. And I look back real quick, it's gone. There's nothing there, but guess what was there? The track on the ground crushed up. I'm just saying, listen, if you are having a question, or if you are like very hesitant, very, about tracks, about, I got to witness this way and I got to do it this way. There is a way for people to witness, of course, and that's great. But the track works if you don't have time. And guess what? You can give it to anybody. I love to give it to my Amazon workers, show up to the house, the post office people, the UPS driver, somebody stops in front of my house, track time. But, I'm just saying, guys, it works. God works through this. And thank you.